Imagine, you are inside. Inside the most famous deception in human history. You are not looking at the Trojan horse from the outside. You are sitting inside its belly, among dozens of others like you, in complete darkness, with a sword in your hands and fear in your throat. Outside, Troy is celebrating. You hear the laughter, toasts, and songs of people who think you have sailed away, that the war is over, and that 10 years of pain are behind them. But they don't know that the real story is just beginning, and you press yourself against the warm wood, saturated with sweat and heavy breathing. Someone nearby covers their mouth with their hands so as not to breathe too loudly, and you don't know how much time has passed. An hour, 2, or is it already midnight? Your body is numb, your heart is pounding in your temples, but you are not a warrior now. You are a drop of poison, part of an idea and a weapon that will be revealed from within. You don't know if you'll live to see the morning and see the sky, but you know one thing. If everything works out, you will be remembered for centuries. And if not, no one will even know you existed. And then, somewhere in the distance, you hear footsteps, someone's voice and laughter. You freeze, everything freezes. And then there is silence, thick as blood. Soon, very soon, you will become part of a legend that will be known for centuries in every corner of the earth. Watch the video to the end, and you will learn the true price of this victory and why, having survived inside the horse, you will never be able to return to your former life. How long did it take you and your comrades to admit the complete failure of traditional military strategy? For 10 whole years, you and the best warriors of Greece fought unsuccessfully against the impregnable walls of Troy. You lost hope with each new sunrise, looking at the high towers of the enemy city. Your great Achilles is dead, and the fighting spirit of your vast army is finally broken by endless waiting. Troy itself stands as firm and unshakable as it did on the very first day of this grueling siege. You and the Greek commanders finally understand the bitter truth. You will never take this fortress by brute force. You need a real miracle or complete madness to break the deadlock. It is at this moment of deepest despair that the cunning Odysseus proposes a plan that sounds wild to you. To you and the others, it looks like certain suicide, and to the enemy, it seems like a ridiculous mockery. He suggests that you not only stop the battle, but also imitate the hasty retreat of the entire Greek armada. Odysseus insists that you burn your own camp so that the smoke can be seen from the city walls. And on the deserted shore, you should leave a giant wooden statue as a farewell offering to the goddess Athena. This is not just a military deception, but a complex psychological game on the verge of foul play. The calculation is based on the deep religiosity of the Trojans and their excessive pride after victory. The idea is to force the enemy to destroy their own defenses with their own hands and let death into their home. Odysseus knows the psychology of his opponents well and understands their way of thinking. You understand. The Trojans would never leave such a valuable trophy to rot on the beach in the rain and wind. To ignore your sacred gift would be considered a terrible insult to the gods, which is what they fear most. The whole plan is based on the idea that human curiosity and greed will outweigh caution. The Trojans must forget about safety in the euphoria of their imagined triumph. But to carry out this grand plan, a unique structure is required. The statue must be able to discreetly accommodate an entire armed squad inside it, you and your brothers in arms. The talented carpenter and engineer Epeus, guided by Odysseus's precise instructions, begins construction before your eyes. He uses the planking of old ships and the trunks of sacred trees to give the structure a sacred appearance. This is no ordinary building or simple idol for worship. Inside, a full-fledged living space is created, completely hidden from prying eyes. The engineers apply all their knowledge of mechanics to make the structure strong, yet hollow inside. Every nail and every board is fitted by craftsmen with jeweler's precision. The main task is to ensure that no accidental ray of light penetrates through the cracks and gives you away. It is a true masterpiece of engineering of that era, but it was created with a single terrible purpose: to become a coffin for an entire city. You, like the ordinary soldiers, look at the growing wooden beast with a mixture of awe and quiet horror. Few truly believe that this insane plan will actually work. The risk to you and the other participants in the operation is simply enormous and defies logical comprehension. If the Trojans decide to burn the horse right on the shore, you will burn alive in terrible agony. You will not have a single chance to get out or resist. And if the enemies decide to check the contents of the belly with long spears, your squad will be killed on the spot. This requires more than just military bravery from you. You need to completely renounce your instinct for self-preservation for the sake of the common victory. Odysseus has staked absolutely everything you have left. He understands that you simply will not have another chance to end this 10-year war. History will remember this moment as the greatest triumph of human cunning. However, for you, a contemporary of those events, it is an act of last-ditch desperation by a man driven into a corner. You leave, leaving behind a symbol of your defeat and shame on the shore. But in reality, this wooden giant is your main and most deadly weapon. The smoke from your burning camp should finally convince Troy of their complete and unconditional victory. Everything is ready for a bloody spectacle that will forever change the course of history. You were not recruited into this special squad by order of your commanders. You volunteered because you had nothing left to lose in this life. Or perhaps your thirst for eternal glory proved much stronger than your animal fear of death. Odysseus personally selected you for this dangerous undertaking. He looked closely into your eyes, trying to read your true feelings. Odysseus was not looking for the madness of a fanatic in you, but a cold and firm determination to see it through to the end. You had to be the best of the best fighters in the entire Greek army. You had to be able to sit completely still for hours in a confined space. You had to be able to control your every breath and every muscle movement. Next to you in the squad were the greatest kings and heroes of the time, such as Menelaus and Diomedes. Your participation and that of such high-ranking individuals made the risk of the operation prohibitively high for the entire army. Losing key commanders in one ridiculous trap would have been a disaster. It would have meant decapitating your entire army with a single blow. The responsibility resting on your shoulders was incredibly heavy. You understood perfectly well the grim prospects of this venture. By climbing into the belly of the wooden horse, you were effectively laying yourself in your own grave. There was no room here for your bouts of claustrophobia, panic, or weak nerves. You deliberately left your heavy shield and armor on the shore. In the cramped space of the wooden statue, your bulky equipment would have taken up too much precious space. You took with you only a short sword, a dagger, and the bare minimum of supplies. Your water and food supplies were calculated to last exactly 1 day of waiting. Preparation for the operation included strict instructions on how to behave inside. The main rule was your ability to behave in complete darkness and absolute silence. You were strictly forbidden to talk, even in a whisper, or to communicate with signs. You were not allowed to move without extreme necessity, so that the creaking of the wood would not give you away. You were even forbidden to sleep, lest accidental loud snoring betray your presence to the enemy. Odysseus sternly warned you of the consequences of breaking the silence. Any unnecessary sound would cost the lives of everyone inside. He promised that any traitor or panicker would be killed on the spot by their own comrades. This created tremendous psychological stress for you even before the operation began. You said goodbye to your remaining friends as if you were going to your certain death. You seriously did not hope to see the next dawn. The atmosphere in the camp before departure was unbearably heavy and gloomy for you. The air was literally saturated with the expectation of an inevitable tragic ending. You understood that your fate now depended not on your military skill. Your life depended solely on the stupidity and gullibility of the enemy. It was humiliating for you, a great hero accustomed to resolving issues in fair and open combat. But 10 years of continuous failures and defeats had taught you humility. Now you were ready to resort to any means to achieve your goal. When the decisive moment of loading arrived, a ringing silence hung around you. You climbed the rickety rope ladder in silence, trying not to look back. The heavy wooden hatch slammed shut above your head with a dull thud. This sound cut you off from the outside world and plunged you into absolute, impenetrable darkness. Inside, You immediately smelled the distinctive scent of fresh wood and resin. This was mixed with the pungent smell of sweat from dozens of male bodies crammed into the confined space next to you. The air instantly became heavy and stuffy, and it became more difficult to breathe with each passing minute. Every breath was difficult due to the lack of ventilation. You sat down on a narrow wooden bench or directly on the floor, trying to take up as little space as possible so as not to disturb your neighbor. Now you were no longer an individual with your own desires and fears. You became part of a single organism, bound by a common fate. Now you were united by a shared, clinging fear of the unknown future. Inside the wooden belly, silence reigned, broken only by the beating of your heart. The longest and most agonizing wait of your life began. What you experience next is similar to a method of psychological torture that is now banned in many countries, but it is what you have voluntarily chosen. Imagine complete, thick, impenetrable darkness that literally presses down on your eyes. In this darkness, you cannot even see your own hand when you hold it up to your face, and you lose your sense of direction. Inside the huge wooden horse, there is not a single crack for light to enter, nor tiny windows for ventilation. Around you are only deaf walls, tightly covered with thick, heavy boards that cut you off from the outside world. The temperature around you begins to rise almost instantly, creating unbearable conditions for life. The air is rapidly heated by your breath, and the breath of 30 adult men in thick leather armor. The scorching southern sun outside mercilessly heats the wood, turning the interior of the statue into a real death trap. After a short time, the space inside the wooden beast turns into a red-hot sauna with no way out. It becomes increasingly difficult to breathe, and the air becomes thick and sticky. Salty sweat streams down your face, flooding your eyes and stinging your skin. It is incredibly difficult to wipe it away because of the extreme crampedness and fear of making any unnecessary movements. Your muscles quickly ache from the uncomfortable, contorted position you have to sit in. Your legs go numb and lose sensitivity, but it is almost impossible for you to change position. Any attempt to move threatens to disturb your neighbor and create dangerous noise. Every accidental rustle you make seems like a deafening roar in this enclosed space. You learn to breathe shallowly and infrequently, trying to conserve precious oxygen as much as possible. You have to control every breath so as not to make any unnecessary sounds that could give away your presence. The silence is so thick and palpable that it rings in your ears. You can clearly hear the frantic beating of your own heart and the pulsing of blood in your temples. Your sense of time disappears within the first hour of confinement, completely disorienting you. Minutes stretch into endless hours of torment, and it seems to you that this torture will last forever. You have no idea whether it is daytime or late at night, morning or evening. Your vast world has suddenly shrunk to the size of a cramped wooden box. The entire universe now smells only of sour sweat, old wood, and animal fear. Dehydration sets in alarmingly quickly due to the heat and nervous tension. Your lips crack until they bleed, and your mouth is so dry that you can't even swallow your saliva. But you can't drink the precious water, and not just to conserve supplies. It is necessary in order to avoid creating unnecessary problems with your natural needs. You endure thirst, knowing that the success of the entire operation depends on it. Your psyche begins to malfunction in conditions of complete sensory deprivation. The constant threat of exposure and the darkness give rise to terrifying images in your mind. You may feel as if the wooden walls are shifting, threatening to crush you to a pulp. Someone nearby is overcome by uncontrollable nervous tremors that are impossible to control. Odysseus and the other commanders monitor your condition in the darkness. They use gestures and light touches to calm those who are on the verge of breaking down. This is a difficult struggle, no longer with an external enemy, but with your own physiology. You have to suppress your basic instincts of self-preservation for the sake of a higher goal. You find yourself a hostage to your own plan, walled up alive in a wooden tomb. No one can guarantee that you will come out alive. Your only connection to reality is the muffled and distorted sounds from outside. They seem to come from another world, muffled by thick walls. You hear the Greek fleet rowing away from the shore. You hear the voices of your comrades leaving the camp gradually fade away. Now you are completely alone in enemy territory, cut off from help. You are at the mercy of chance and your enemies, who can kill you at any moment. It is a cruel test that breaks the weak-minded and tempers the strong. Your composure in these hours means more than your skill with a sword or spear. If you like learning about such incredible details, be sure to like this video right now. The most frightening and tense moment comes for you when the Trojans finally emerge from the city gates. They surround the wooden horse in a tight circle, examining the curiosity. Inside the statue, you freeze instantly, as if turned to cold stone. You even stop breathing, afraid that your chest will creak against your armor. You hear the surprised voices of your enemies, their loud arguments and boisterous laughter. Heavy footsteps of hundreds of armed men echo around your precarious hiding place. The Trojans are heatedly discussing what to do with this strange gift from the Danans. Some of the more cautious suggest immediately throwing the statue off a high cliff into the sea. Others shout that it should be chopped up with axes right there and then to check its contents. Your heart is beating so hard and loudly that it seems as if it can be heard outside. The priest Laocoon is the only one who immediately suspects something is wrong with this gift. He grabs a heavy spear and throws it with force into the side of the wooden horse. The powerful blow shakes the entire structure to its foundations, causing the wood to groan. The weapon pierces the planking with a dull, vibrating sound that echoes inside. To you, sitting in ambush, it sounds like a sudden clap of thunder right above your ear. You almost flinch from surprise and fear, but you hold back with an effort of will. The sharp blade of the spear passes literally inches from your body. Death is close, but you don't make a sound. You don't even flinch. Your composure at this moment is beyond human capabilities. This is the highest point of tension in the entire operation, when your life and the lives of the entire squad hang by a thread. If you had cried out in fear or pain at that moment, it would have been all over. Even your loud exhalation could have doomed the legendary heroes and buried any hope of victory. Everything is decided in a split second, and by your nerves of steel. The Trojans are standing very close by, listening for a reaction to the spear thrust. They try to catch even the slightest sign of life inside the mysterious statue. But in response, they hear only the dead, ringing silence of the wooden idol. It is precisely this absolute silence that saves the Greeks from imminent slaughter on the shore. It convinces the Trojans and those who doubt that the statue is completely empty inside. Believing themselves to be safe, the enemies make a fateful decision. Then the chaotic movement begins when they decide to drag the huge horse into the city. The wooden floor beneath your feet begins to shake, losing its stability. You are thrown against others, hitting hard walls and neighbors. Despite the bruises and contusions, you remain completely silent. Outside, you can hear the piercing squeak of wheels and the strained cries of people pulling thick ropes. Periodically, the structure hits the walls of the narrow fortress gates, causing new shocks. Inside, everything merges into a terrifying cacophony of sounds and vibrations. You are shaken and thrown from side to side like a helpless cargo in the hold of a ship during a storm. The horse has no springs, so every stone on the road causes pain in your body. This journey seems like an endless nightmare full of physical suffering. Added to your physical pain is the chilling fear of being discovered at the very last moment. When the movement finally stops and relative silence descends, you realize the main thing. You are now in the heart of an impregnable enemy citadel. Surrounding you are not just high walls, but thousands of armed enemies celebrating their victory. There is no way back. The bridges have been burned. The heavy hatch can only be opened from the inside or broken from the outside. You have become a deadly virus that has successfully infiltrated the city's organism. Now all you can do is wait for your moment to strike from within. Could you remain completely silent when a deadly spear flies past you, just a centimeter away? The long-awaited night arrives, but for Troy, it suddenly becomes much brighter than the sunniest day due to thousands of lit torches and blazing bonfires. You hear the whole city noisily celebrating the great victory, which the inhabitants consider final and well-deserved. Huge crowds of people pour joyfully into the narrow streets. Expensive wine flows like an endless river, and everywhere there is loud music and drunken laughter. You understand that the Trojans sincerely praise their gods for the fact that the hated Greeks have finally left, leaving their strange gifts on the shore. On that fateful night, no one thinks to post reinforced guards at key posts, and no one checks the condition of the walls. The citizens are deeply convinced that the war is over for good, and that the time has come for their long-awaited rest. Deep inside the wooden horse, you can clearly hear this foreign celebration of life. To you, these sounds of merriment sound like a death sentence, because any accident could reveal your presence. Every loud toast to Troy's eternal victory is a painful blow to your pride, and the pride of the great heroes sitting next to you in the cramped darkness. However, this general noise plays into your hands, as it reliably conceals your possible rustling and accidental sounds inside the huge statue. Drunken guards rapidly lose all vigilance, falling asleep right at their posts or leaving without permission to join the feast. The city, which heroically defended itself against your army for 10 whole years, has opened its gates and completely relaxed. You witness a night of incredible, triumphant carelessness, when collective euphoria completely eclipses human reason. The Trojans dance ecstatically around the horse, jokingly patting its thick wooden sides, completely unaware of the danger. They do not even realize that their death is within arm's reach, hidden from them only by a thin layer of boards. For you and your squad inside, this is a time of extreme concentration and final preparation for a decisive breakout. In the pitch darkness, you check your weapons by touch, adjust your sword, and carefully stretch your limbs, stiff from sitting for so long. Adrenaline gradually begins to replace your accumulated fatigue and oppressive fear of the unknown. Through microscopic cracks in the paneling, or simply through the pores of the dry wood, the appetizing smell of roasted meat and campfire smoke reaches you. It teases you painfully, hungry and exhausted as you are, but only intensifies your inner anger and fierce determination to finish off the enemy. You clearly understand that this noisy celebration will be the last in the long history of this once great and proud city. The irony of the situation seems monstrous to you. The future victim is happily celebrating his supposed salvation, standing arm in arm with his killer. Odysseus, maintaining his icy composure, gestures for you and the others to freeze. A tense silence reigns inside the horse, contrasting with the madness reigning in the streets. Gradually, the festive noise in the streets begins to subside, replaced by heavy drunken snoring and the occasional shouts of the last night revelers. The bright lights of the festive bonfires go out one by one, and the city gradually sinks into a heavy, unhealthy sleep. The last guard on the walls finally falls asleep, completely confident in his safety. The so-called hour of the wolf arrives, that time before dawn when human sleep is at its deepest. Your internal clock tells you that your time has finally come. The perfect moment has arrived to begin the end of the great Troy. This whole incredible operation depends not only on you and the heroes who are languishing inside the horse, but also on one man outside. Sinon, the Greek spy who was deliberately left on shore to convince the Trojans to accept the gift, is now waiting for the signal. He must carefully make sure that the city is completely asleep, and give the signal to the main fleet at the right moment. Your ships are secretly hiding behind the nearest island, waiting for the moment to return to shore. When it becomes completely quiet on the high walls and the torches finally burn out, Sinon lights a bright fire on a hill. This fire is clearly visible from the sea and serves as the point of no return, when the mechanism of total destruction is set in motion. After signaling the fleet, Sinon carefully approaches the belly of the wooden horse and taps the boards several times in a prearranged rhythm. Inside the enclosed space, this quiet knock sounds louder to you than an alarming alarm bell, causing you to instantly move closer. Odysseus nods briefly to you in the darkness, and the complex mechanisms of the secret locks slide aside as quietly as possible. The heavy hatch opens smoothly, and a stream of fresh, cool night air rushes into the stuffy belly. After spending many hours in the foul and hot atmosphere inside, you feel it as a real breath of life. Odysseus himself, or Master Epius, is the first to cautiously peek out of the hatch to personally check the situation around the high pedestal. The area in front of the temple is completely empty. Only in the distance, in the dim light, you can see the dark silhouettes of figures sleeping by extinguished fires. You quickly throw down the rope ladder you prepared in advance, trying not to let it hit the wooden side of the horse. Your descent is swift and almost silent. You slide down after the others like a disembodied shadow. When your feet finally touch solid ground, it brings an incredible sense of physical relief. You are free again, ready for your last and most important battle. You suddenly find yourself in the heart of a sleeping enemy city, with virtually no outside support, part of a small band of brave souls against thousands of enemies. However, now the initiative and the element of surprise are entirely in your capable hands. Your squad instantly and without further ado splits into several combat groups according to a pre-approved plan. Some fighters quickly head for the main fortress gates to open them for the returning army. You or your comrades rush to the houses of the Trojan nobility and military barracks to neutralize the enemy on the spot. All the saboteurs' movements are perfectly coordinated. There is no fuss in your actions, only cold and cruel calculation. The silence of Troy at night is extremely deceptive for you at this moment, and any accidental loud cry can instantly raise a general alarm. Therefore, you need to act with surgical precision and extreme caution at every step. Each step you take on the stone pavement could be your last if one of the guards suddenly wakes up from the noise. But military luck and the enemy's extreme carelessness that night are completely on your side. You move forward, knowing that thousands of comrades are already landing on the shore behind you. Your main and most important goal is the legendary Ska Gate. For 10 long years, it has remained firmly closed to you, protecting the city from destruction. Your small squad, moving along the walls like shadows, silently approaches the guard room at the entrance. The guards, exhausted by the long holiday and strong wine, are fast asleep. On that fateful night, they did not even bother to post a single sentry at the approaches to the gate. The process of eliminating the sleeping guards is surprisingly quick and almost perfectly silent. There is no unnecessary noise in the air, nor the clang of bronze weapons that is so familiar in battle. This is not like your honest battle in the open field. Rather, it resembles professional and cold-blooded work to clear the perimeter. You act decisively, realizing that every second of delay could cost the lives of your entire army. Having seized the massive bundles of keys, you begin to open the heavy oak bolts. The huge bronze hinges of the gate have been greased in advance by spies, but you still fear a treacherous creak. Therefore, you proceed with extreme caution, moving the huge doors millimeter by millimeter. When the gates begin to slowly swing open, the thick night mist of the plain reveals itself in the opening. There, in the deep darkness, your main army is already silently and rapidly approaching the city. Those warriors who supposedly sailed away forever on their ships during the day have secretly returned under the cover of night. Now they march in tight formation, straight towards the gates of the doomed fortress that you have opened. At this very moment, the long-standing fate of Troy is finally and irrevocably sealed. The great city, once considered impregnable, suddenly finds itself completely defenseless without its mighty stone walls. Emerging from the belly of the horse, you light bright torches, sending a signal to your comrades outside. This sudden light becomes a beacon of imminent doom for the sleeping city. Endless streams of heavily armed men poured in, instantly filling the streets and main squares. The 10-year siege, which had exhausted both sides, finally ended, and your devastating assault from within began. Meanwhile, other groups quickly block all exits from the military barracks. This is done so that Troy's soldiers cannot organize themselves to fight you. You prop up the massive doors from the outside and set up barricades, depriving the enemy of maneuverability. Large-scale chaos has not yet engulfed the city, but it is already inevitable. The city reminds you of a huge powder keg with a burning fuse. Everything is ready for the final act of this tragedy. Having completely fulfilled your main task, you happily join the general army that has arrived. Now you are no longer a lonely and vulnerable shadow in the heart of the enemy's lair. You are once again part of a great and mighty army, ready for the final showdown. Your previous sense of mortal danger is replaced by a feeling of omnipotence and imminent triumph. At first, You notice thin wisps of gray smoke creeping over the dark roofs of residential neighborhoods. However, very soon they turn into roaring, uncontrollable flames engulfing entire streets. You and your comrades begin systematically setting fire to wealthy homes, commercial warehouses, and majestic temples of the Trojan gods. You do this to sow panic among the inhabitants and light your way through the night city. The fire spreads at an incredible speed, instantly jumping from one dry wooden building to another. The night sky above Troy is painted in eerie crimson tones, and the streets become as bright as midday. The crackling of burning centuries-old wood and the rumbling of collapsing massive beams completely drown out the silence of the night. The Trojans wake up in suffocating smoke and unbearable heat, at first not understanding what is happening. The sleepy stupor after the holiday is instantly replaced by chilling horror when people see you and your brothers in arms on their doorsteps. Panic sweeps through the city in a matter of minutes. You see people rushing around, trying to save what little they have left. You encounter virtually no organized military resistance, as everyone is trying to survive on their own. This is the complete and final collapse of the entire powerful military machine of Troy, which you have taken by surprise. Your squad, encountering no serious resistance, advances purposefully toward the luxurious palace of King Priam. The streets of the once beautiful city have turned into a veritable labyrinth of fire, smoke, and terrible destruction. Now every turn in a familiar alleyway hides mortal danger. The statues of ancient gods, which for centuries were supposed to protect this city, now look on indifferently at its destruction. Through the thick veil of soot, their stone faces seem sinister and indifferent to the suffering of the people. The great architecture, lovingly created by many generations of craftsmen, is being barbarically destroyed before your eyes in a matter of hours. The city is slowly and painfully dying before you, turning into a shapeless pile of coals and gray ashes. The end of a great era comes amid your triumphant cries, and the cries of other invaders. Thick smoke stings your eyes mercilessly, and the high air temperature makes it increasingly difficult to breathe. Nevertheless, your rapid advance does not stop for a second. The heat from the widespread fires is so intense that it melts gold utensils. The shadow of your enormous figure dances ominously on the surviving walls, creating the image of a mythical monster. For every Trojan, you have brought the real end of the world to their cozy homes. The inhabitants' hope for a miraculous rescue melts away as quickly as their neighborhoods burn. In this fiery chaos, the very essence of Troy, its rich culture and former greatness, disappears irretrievably. What has been built and fortified over many generations is crumbling under the blows of your axe and the onslaught of fire. That night, you spare absolutely nothing, seeking to erase the memory of your rival forever. This is not just a successful military operation, but the deliberate and total destruction of an entire civilization by your own hands. By dawn, all that remains of Troy's former grandeur and beauty are smoldering ruins and mountains of rubble. When the first rays of the sun illuminate the shore, the city you have besieged for centuries no longer exists. You celebrate your victory on the ashes, gathering rich spoils and capturing prisoners. You have destroyed the myth of the fortress's impregnability, along with its proud walls and towers. As the sun slowly rises above the horizon, it illuminates a scene of complete and irreversible devastation. Where yesterday a proud and fabulously wealthy city stood majestically, now you see only the smoking black skeletons of buildings. The air for miles around is saturated with the heavy, suffocating smell of burning, which has literally seeped into the ground itself. All the central streets you walk along are littered with rubble from stone walls, gray ash, and charred wooden beams. The dead silence that suddenly descended after a night of bloody chaos seems even more frightening to you than the recent noise of battle. The city, which had pulsated with life for thousands of years, froze in an instant. You wander silently among the smoking ruins, collecting valuable trophies and assessing the scale of the destruction. Gold jewelry, bronze artifacts, and expensive oriental fabrics. All of this now belongs to you as the rightful victor. But for some reason, there is no sincere joy at the long-awaited triumph on your face or the faces of the other soldiers. Your eyes reveal only endless physical exhaustion, and deep inner emptiness. 10 long years of grueling war are finally over, but the price of this final victory seems truly terrifying to you. Even the most battle-hardened veterans look at the work of their hands with gloomy, heavy silence. You, one of the heroes who spent agonizing hours inside the wooden horse, now stand in the center of the square as the ultimate victor. However, your gaze still reflects the incredible psychological strain you experienced in the darkness. You have accomplished an unprecedented feat that will surely go down in history, but this ordeal has forever changed your inner world. You saw from the inside how an entire civilization collapsed, and you realized that you yourself were the main cause of this total destruction. The heavy psychological burden of that bloody night will remain in your memory until the end of your life. Every great victory, as you have discovered, has its own bitter and unpleasant taste of cold ashes. The famous Trojan horse, now useless and forgotten by all, stands alone in the middle of the ruined square. Now it looks to you not like a sacred gift, but like a grim monument to human cunning and calculation. It has completely fulfilled its insidious function and turned into an ordinary, useless pile of burnt wood. The symbol that was supposed to bring long-awaited peace brought only absolute and swift destruction to the inhabitants of Troy. The history of humanity took a sharp turn that night, and the world will never be the same for you again. The legendary era of great heroes is ending, giving way to a new era of iron and cold cruelty. Your ships on the shore have already begun active preparations for departure, their holds filled to the brim with looted spoils. But many of those who came with you 10 years ago to the high walls of Troy remain lying in its dry earth forever. You return to your homeland a completely different person, carrying the darkness of that terrible night in your soul. Great Troy has finally fallen, but its dark shadow will haunt your dreams for a very long time. Thus, from the fire, smoke, and your conscious betrayal, one of the most powerful myths in human history is born. The fall of Troy became for you not just a dry historical fact, but an eternal story that has lived on in culture for more than 3,000 years. The great Homer sang of your tragic deeds in his immortal poems, turning a brutal massacre into a great human tragedy. We still argue heatedly about how much truth there is in these ancient stories about you. Researchers are concerned with the question of whether the wooden horse actually existed, or whether it is a beautiful metaphor for your cunning. Modern archaeologists have indeed found deep layers of charcoal and traces of mass destruction in those places. This confirms that the great city was indeed destroyed in a massive catastrophe, of which you were a part. However, many details of that fateful night will forever remain hidden in the impenetrable fog of time. Over time, your Trojan horse has become a byword for any hidden betrayal or sophisticated cunning. This vivid image is actively used today in high politics, complex computer security, and military strategy. It clearly teaches us that even the highest and strongest walls are powerless against a well-disguised internal threat. Your dramatic story is an eternal lesson in vigilance, and a stark reminder that excessive pride always precedes a fall. We continue to study your war in detail, trying to fully understand the true nature of human conflict. For you, a direct participant in those distant events, it was a harsh reality full of pain, wild fear, and road dirt. For you, it was not a beautiful legend that would be retold by descendants thousands of years later. You and your brothers in arms did not know that one day you would become popular characters in books and big-budget Hollywood films. You were ordinary people who simply wanted to survive the chaos and defeat your longtime enemy. Your difficult experience shows us what a person is truly capable of in order to achieve their cherished goal. This is a story about how dangerous the line between true heroism and cruel war crimes can be. Your story has no expiration date, because basic human nature has remained virtually unchanged for centuries. Today, we look sadly at the picturesque ruins of ancient Troy and see there a reflection of our own modern wars. The methods of warfare have changed greatly, but the essence of the psychological struggle you waged remains the same. Subtle deception and cunning often prove to be much more effective than the use of direct and brute physical force. Your horse is our eternal reminder that a dangerous enemy can come to us in the most attractive guise. And as long as humanity remembers this important lesson, your story continues to live on in our collective memory. The story of the fall of the great city has become truly immortal and important for each new generation. In the end, it is not so important to us what kind of wood you used to carve that horse. Much more important is the colossal effect this image had on the entire subsequent history of the world. It was your great victory of intellect over brute force, albeit achieved in a very cruel way. We must always remember this event so that we do not repeat the fatal mistakes of the gullible Trojans in our own lives. Sometimes what at first glance seems like a wonderful gift can turn out to be your swift and sad end. Be extremely careful about who and what you voluntarily let into your cozy home. The story of the fall of Troy teaches us that even the most impregnable fortresses can fall from within if the right key to human psychology is found. 30 men in a wooden horse did what a 100,000-strong army could not do in 10 years. It was a triumph of cunning, endurance, and cruel calculation. Do you think such cunning is justified in war, or is it a dishonorable act? Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next episodes about the greatest mysteries of history.